Hi, everybody. It's such a beautiful day outside. I wanted to read today's word outside. And today's February 23rd. Leviticus 14:1, 5 through 7. And the Lord said to Moses, "The following instructions are for those seeking ceremonial purification from a skin disease. Those who have been healed must be brought to the priest, who will examine them at a place outside the camp. If the priest finds that someone has been healed of a serious skin disease, he will perform a purification ceremony using 2 live birds that are ceremonial clean, a stick of cedar, some scarlet yarn, and a hyssop branch. The priest will order that 1 bird be slaughtered over a clay pot filled with fresh water. He will take the live bird, the cedar stick, the scarlet yarn, and the hyssop branch, and dip them into the blood of the bird that was slaughtered over the fresh water. The priest will then sprinkle the blood of the dead bird 7 times on the person being purified of the skin disease. When the priest has purified the person, he will release the live bird in the open field to fly away. The person being purified must then wash their clothes, shave off all their hair, and bathe themselves in water. Then they will be ceremonial clean, and they may return to the camp. However, they must remain outside their tents for 7 days. On the 7th day, they must again shave all the hair from their heads, including the hair of the beard and eyebrows. They must also wash their clothes and bathe themselves in water. Then they will be ceremonial clean. On the 8th day, each person being purified must bring 2 male lambs and 1-year-old female lamb, all with no defects, along with a grain offering of 6 quarts of choice flour moistened with olive oil and a cup of olive oil. Then the officiating priest will present the person for purification along with the offerings before the Lord at the entrance of the tabernacle. The priest will take 1 of the male lambs and the olive oil and present them as a guilt offering, lifting them up as a special offering before the Lord. He will then slaughter the male lamb in the sacred area where sin offerings and burnt offerings are slaughtered. As the sin offering, the guilt offerings belongs to the priest. It is the most holy offering. The priest will then take some of the blood of the guilt offering and apply it to the lobe of the right ear, the thumb of the right hand, and the big toe of the right foot of the person being purified. Then the priest will pour some of the olive oil into the palm of his own left hand. He will dip his right finger into the oil in the palm and sprinkle some of it with his finger 7 times before the Lord. The priest will then apply some of the oil in his palm over the blood from the guilt offering that is in the lobe of the right ear, the thumb of the right hand, and the big toe of the right foot of the person being purified. The priest will apply the oil remaining in his hand to the head of the person being purified. Through this process, the priest will purify the person before the Lord. Then the priest must present the sin offering to purify the person who was cured of the skin disease. After that, the priest will slaughter the burnt offering and offer it to the altar along with the grain offering. Through this process, the priest will purify the person who was healed, and the person will be ceremonial clean. But anyone who is too poor and cannot afford these offerings may bring 1 male lamb for a guilt offering to be lined up as a special offering for purification. The person must also bring 2 quarts of choice flour moistened with olive oil for the grain offering and a cup of olive oil. The offering must include 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, whichever the person can afford. 1 of the pair must be used for the sin offering and the other for the burnt offering. On the 8th day of the purification ceremony, the person being purified must bring the offerings to the priest in the Lord's presence at the entrance of the tabernacle. The priest will take the lamb for the guilt offering along with the olive oil and lift them up as a special offering to the Lord. Then the priest will slaughter the lamb for the guilt offering. He will take some of its blood and apply it to the lobe of the right ear, the thumb of the right hand, and the big toe of the right foot of the person being purified. I don't know what's up with the big toe, but interesting. The priest will also pour some of the olive oil into the palm of his own left hand. He will dip his right finger into the oil in his in his palm and sprinkle some of it 7 times before the Lord. The priest will then apply some of the oil in his palm over the blood from the guilt offering that is in the lobe of the right ear, the thumb of the right hand, and the big toe of the right foot of the person being purified. The priest will apply the oil remaining in his hand to the head of the person being purified. Through this process, the priest will purify the person before the Lord. Then the priest will offer the 2 turtle doves or the 2 young pigeons, whichever the person can afford. Wow, that was a lot. One of them is for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering to be presented along with the grain offering. Through this process, the priest will purify the person before the Lord. These are the instructions for purification for those who have recovered from a serious skin disease, and sin disease, but who cannot afford to bring the offerings normally required for the ceremony of purification. Then the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "When you arrive in Canaan, the land I am giving you as your own possession, I may contaminate some of the houses in your land with mildew. The owner of such a house may then go to the priest and say, 'It appears that my house has some kind of mildew.' Before the priest goes in to inspect the house, he must have the house emptied so nothing inside will be pronounced ceremonial unclean. Then the priest who will go and examine the mildew on the walls. If he finds greenish or reddish streaks and the contamination appears to go deeper than the wall's surface, the priest will step outside the door and put the house in quarantine for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest must return for another inspection. If he finds that the mildew on the walls of the house has spread, the priest must order that the stones from those areas be removed. The contaminated material will then be taken outside the town to an area designated as ceremonial unclean. Next, the inside walls of the entire house must be scraped through the scrapings dumped in the unclean places, the place outside the town. Other stones will be brought to replace the ones that were removed, and the walls will be replastered. But if the mildew reappears after all the stones have been replaced and the house has been scraped and replastered, the priest must return and inspect the house again. If he finds that the mildew has spread, the walls are clearly contaminated with a serious mildew, and the house is defiled, it must be torn down, and all its stones, timbers, and plaster must be carried out of town to the place designated as ceremonial unclean. Those who enter the house during the period of quarantine will be ceremonial unclean until evening, and all who sleep or eat in the house must wash their clothing. But if the priest returns for inspection and finds that the mildew has not reappeared in the house after the fresh plastering, he will pronounce it clean because the mildew is clearly gone. To purify the house, the priest must take 2 birds, a stick of cedar, some scarlet yarn, and a hyssop branch. He will slaughter one of the birds over a clay pot filled with fresh water. He will take a cedar stick, the hyssop branch, the scarlet yarn, and the live bird, and dip them into the blood of the slaughtered bird, and then the fresh water. Then he will sprinkle the house 7 times. When the priest has purified the house in exactly this way, he will release the live bird in the open fields outside the town. Through this process, the priest will purify the house, and it will be ceremonial clean. These are the instructions for dealing with serious skin diseases, including scabby sores and mildew, whether on clothing or in a house, and a swelling on the skin, a rash, or discolored skin. This procedure will determine whether a person or object is ceremonial clean or unclean. These are the instructions regarding skin diseases and mildew. Wow, there's just a lot that they had to do in the Old Testament. And then they released the live bird that was used in that ceremony. Can you imagine having to see that? It's just pretty serious. Moving on to Matthew 6:30-56. The apostles returned to Jesus from their ministry tour and told them all they had done and taught. Then Jesus said, "Let's go off by ourselves to a quiet place and rest a while." He said this because there were so many people coming and going that Jesus and his apostles didn't even have time to eat. So they left by boat for a quiet place where they could be alone. But many people recognized them and saw them leaving, and people from many towns ran along ahead on the shore and got there ahead of them. Jesus saw the huge crowd as he stepped from the boat, and he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. Late in the afternoon, his disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place, and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so we can go to the nearby farms and villages and buy something to eat." I'm going to stop there because they went out of their way to be alone and to eat, and the crowds followed them. So Jesus had a lot of patience and grace for people, and he looked on them with compassion. But Jesus said, "You feed them." With what? They asked. We've had to work for months to earn enough money to buy food for all these people. We'd have to work for months to earn enough money to feed them. "How much bread do you have?" Jesus asked. "Go and find out." They came back and reported, "We have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish." Then Jesus told the disciples to have the people sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of 50 or 100. Jesus took the 5 loaves and 2 fish, looked up towards heaven, and blessed them. Then breaking the loaves into pieces, he began giving the bread to the disciples so they could distribute it to the people. He also divided the fish for everyone to share. They all ate as much as they wanted, and afterward the disciples picked up 12 baskets of leftover bread and fish. A total of 5,000 men and their families were fed from those loaves. Immediately after this, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and head across the lake to Bethsaida, where he sent the people home. After telling everyone goodbye, he went up into the hills by himself to pray. Wow, that was an incredible miracle. Feeding 5,000 people. That's amazing. Late that night, the disciples were in the boat in the middle of the lake, and Jesus was alone on land. He saw that they were in a serious trouble, rowing hard and struggling against the wind and waves. About 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came towards them, walking on the water. He intended to go past them, but when they saw him walking on the water, they cried out in terror, thinking he was a ghost. They were all terrified when they saw him. I never noticed that in this passage it said that Jesus intended to go past them. I wonder why he was intending to go past them. I always thought that he walked towards them. But when Jesus spoke to them at once, he said, "Don't be afraid. Take courage. I am here." Then he climbed into the boat and the wind stopped. They were totally amazed, for they still didn't understand the significance of the miracle of the loaves. Their heart was too hard to take it in. Yeah, it is. It is amazing. After they had crossed the lake, they landed at Gennesaret. They brought the boat to shore and climbed out. The people recognized Jesus at once, and they ran in throughout the whole area, carrying sick people on mats to wherever they heard where he was. Wherever he went, in villages, cities, or the countryside, they brought the sick out to the marketplaces. They begged him to let the sick touch at least the fringe of his robe, and all who touched him were healed. Wow. Jesus became very popular, and all who touched his robe became healed. Wow. Psalm 40, 1 through 10, a psalm of David. I waited patiently for the Lord to help me, and he turned to me and heard me cry. He lifted me out of the pit of despair, out of the mud and the mire. He set my feet on solid ground and steadied me as I walked along. He has given me a new song to sing, a hymn of praise to our God. Many will see what he has done and be amazed. They will put their trust in the Lord. Oh, the joys of those who trust the Lord, who have no confidence in the proud or in those who worship idols. O Lord my God, you have performed many wonders for us. Your plans for us are too numerous to list. You have no equal. If I tried to recite all your wonderful deeds, I would never come to the end of them. You take no delight in sacrifices or offerings. Now that you have made me listen, I finally understand. You don't require burnt offerings or sin offerings. Then I said, look, I have come. As it is written about me in the scriptures, I take joy in doing your will, my God, for your instructions are written on my heart. I have told all your people about your justice. I have not been afraid to speak out, as you, O Lord, well know. I have not kept the good news of your justice hidden in my heart. I have talked about your faithfulness and saving power. I have told everyone in the great assembly of your unfailing love and faithfulness. Wow. And to end today, we have Proverbs 10, 11, 12. The words of the godly are a life-giving fountain. The words of the wicked conceal violent intentions. Hatred stirs up quarrels, but love makes up for all offenses. So, I don't know, the word I kind of got from today was just to put on love. It just takes an act of obedience, because all of us are offended constantly. There's a lot to be offended from, a lot to be offended by. But just like we put on clothing and we discipline ourselves to brush our teeth, take vitamins, go to the gym, which I need to do, but we all have those disciplines, but we can choose to pray for somebody that we're offended at. We can choose to put on love and choose to, decide that we're not going to be offended. We can choose that. We can put those attributes on and make a conscious effort to find the good in people. It does take a discipline, and I encourage you today to do that, to put on love, and to decide that you're going to not be offended and pray for people. So that's my advice to myself and to everybody listening. Thank you for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you tomorrow.